You're listening to All Things 3D, where we talk about the world of fabricating, designing, and capturing in the third dimension.
Hey, everybody. Hey, Mike. Happy anniversary, buddy.
That's right. It is kind of 2 years. So John kind of texted, is this being live streamed? Yes, it is right now. It's being live streamed. Currently, we have all of 0 viewers, but sometimes they come in.
It's on a Google Hangout on YouTube.
Go out to All Things 3D Google Plus page and into their events, and you'll find it. So hopefully that'll be enough. So yes, hi, Mike. My co-host Chris. He's a little guy. He couldn't actually make it here in studio with me, but he's a little guy in a little box down there, just like where I need him, in that little box.
Yeah, and it's our 2-year anniversary roundtable episode, man. How exciting! I feel so lucky and special to have on this journey with you, Mike. It's been such a fun ride, and we've had so many cool guests.
Yeah, I know. Do you remember our first episode? Our first episode was like in my office when I was in San Luis Obispo.
It was the Fred Dini or something?
People. No, that was the second episode.
Okay,
so we had Dr. Dan Kopp, our local dentist, who was using 3D, plus a couple of local people, and we literally, because I thought, well, maybe we could just have 4 simultaneously streams going. No, that didn't work out too well. So he literally just put a microphone in the middle of the room and just kind of talked to it. So we've come a long way since then.
We've done a lot of these things now, haven't we?
We have. I think we are about 150 episodes of interviews, 3D interview. Yeah.
Yeah, and you could go back. I mean, it's fun to we've had some incredible guests, and today we have so the format of the show is roundtable discussion. This is where we bring in guests who are joining us live on the Hangout from all over, and we have some great guests that joined us, even though it's kind of a weird shift. It's kind of late most places.
Except here. Let's kind of get into it. We've got actually 4 that have joined us right now. A couple will be straggling a little later. 3 of them are familiar faces. One's a brand new face, somebody that I've been working with lately, but I thought he'd had something interesting to say in this spectrum because he's doing some pretty cool stuff as well. So I will start. If you're looking at the panel, Drew is on our immediate left. He's from the great country of Canada, from Matter and Form. Next to him is somebody new. Hopefully we'll have him on as an interview. And this is Aaron. He's up in the Minnesota area. Yeah. I'll be a little. I need to get like a little soundtrack of. And then obviously we have in our presence John. I mean, this guy's a celebrity. He's worldwide known. In fact, when I was at MedX just a couple of weeks ago, his name came up again. It's like, can we hear enough of this guy? Nope. John and the eNavel program. So thank you for joining us. And then right next to him we have Phil Nelson. I actually went up to Cipodal and joined them up there. He's been on a couple of times. He's like the heart of San Francisco. I'm glad we had on because, Jeff, he's from Colorado. He's not really from San Francisco.
Well, technically we're both from Michigan, but I appreciate the compliment.
Okay, well, you've integrated well enough. And then obviously my co-host Chris above me here, but I'm going to go back to my own screen. Okay, on that note, as some of you who are familiar with our earlier versions of our roundtable, essentially I bring up a few items in the news and we kind of have some comments on them, and then we get into the topics. And our topic title, and I thought this is important because, really the hype in 3D has kind of died down in the media. So I guess what I'm asking is, what is the real potential of personal 3D? And I use the term not necessarily loosely, but 3D, in my opinion, that's why it's called All Things 3D for our show, includes 3D fabrication, tangible object creation, design software, and I was hoping somebody from Autodesk, but Jesse got pulled off, I think, I think he's going to Sweden or somewhere, so he couldn't join us. And also 3D scanning, and luckily we've got one of the people that have, actually 2, that are really big in the personal 3D scanning area as well. And and then hopefully I was hoping Fred would join us. Fred was actually in our second, and he's an interesting guy, so hopefully he can come on a little bit as well. But who also does 3D scanning as well as 3D fabrication. If you don't know who Fred is, he created, what was it, the boardwalk in Coney Island back when I think it was 1918, all in 3D. So if you haven't seen his work, he's considered himself great Fredini. So hopefully he'll join us a little bit later. We also have Brad Hill, who created the little SLA, which was very, very popular. He'll be joining us a little bit later. But I guess what I'm wanting as we get through this is kind of, is this stagnated? Is personal 3D dead? Am I just trying to get, people to come and be attracted to our show because I said it's dead? Is it just like Halloween and the dead theme is like good? Walking Dead just started Sunday. Thought that was a pretty, never mind. Okay, so on to our first news item. So what do I got here? Well, I got the Ars Technica. So I guess it is still in the news, but home 3D printers take on a maddening journey into another dimension. I thought this was kind of a neat article, and someone asked me, I hope.
Yeah, I thought this, you're going to pull it up?
Yep, here we go.
Oh, here it is.
So essentially, it was a fun little article because they kind of looked at the history. As far back as the rep-rap movement, and then kind of this guy's own feedback on the whole thing. Here's kind of like the earlier models of 3D printing. So what did you guys think of this article?
I mean, it was exactly the same as so many people that I've talked to, and even my own experience. I thought the article was like exactly what everyone experiences when they get their first 3D printer.
Yeah, I'm with you. We have we had a MakerBot here in San Francisco, and we have a Ultimaker in the Boulder office, and I had so much trouble. Like I went into that. I'm that kind of person that I went into it like, I just want to figure out how this works myself. And it was just really hard and a lot of wasted plastic.
John, you have worked with a lot of people from around the world, and obviously they have an important goal: use personal 3D printing to create some pretty novel and unique, and we can't use the word prosthetic, I've been told, so maybe you can identify what that word is, but essentially to create adjunct components that a lot of children wear. So what is your opinion? I mean, is this really the truth in this article, or do you think that things are coming along? What do you feel?
Well, I think I think there's truth in the article, and I think that things are coming along. According to the FDA, what we are doing are indeed prosthetic devices. If you look at the FDA's definition, shoes and back scratchers would also qualify as prosthetic devices, so they have a fair amount of discretion. We're using 3D printers to make these devices. We've got lots of people who are doing it very effectively, and yet there's no one I know who doesn't complain about the finickiness of these printers. So more and more people are doing it. I presume the printers are getting better, although I can't vouch for that. I think they will get better, and when they do, it's gonna really take off, even beyond what is currently happening.
Well, I like to liken this to who had a Hewlett-Packard or even an Apple LaserJet back in the early days, or am I the old guy here? I mean, back in the early 80s, if you had a LaserJet printer or a dot matrix, they had a lot of problems as well. And who had an early color inkjet printer? I mean, I'm still having problems with mine. So, yes, you add, I guess, a third dimension, and you have motors involved in this, but you've always had motors. So I just think we're at the starting point. Who had an early computer? Who had a Sinclair? Well, so, I mean, what could you do on it? You loaded in, you actually typed in all little basic programs, and you crossed your fingers if you got it right in your typing. But, I mean, if you remember those days, the same thing was, who's going to want one of these things? You got to put so much time and effort into it. So, I mean, I guess we're at the early stages of it. As you said, John, the software has improved. Chris, as we have found out and talking with so many great people, this is all just evolving so quickly, and probably, in my opinion, much faster than the personal computer. I mean, we've gone literally in 3 years to, I think, a device that you can put on your desk and, with very little setup, be able to actually print from it. So that's just my opinion.
I do have one little thing to say about this particular article is the author does kind of make a pretty generic statement with home 3D printers in the title, but he's basing his knowledge on his trial and error with the PrinterBot Simple, which really doesn't necessarily reflect all home 3D printers. I mean, my experience with my Lulzbot Mini was within 5 minutes, and yes, I've gone through the learning curve and I know some of the little tricks, but with the Lulzbot Mini, I literally pulled it out of the package and in 5 minutes was printing perfect parts. So there is a pretty wide gamut of printers out there, and I think that kind of making a general, kind of lumping all of them in maybe isn't quite fair.
No, go ahead.
So I would agree that definitely there's a gamut of different types of printers. I have a Dremel that was very easy to use. I also have a Form 1 which I love, but is a lot more finicky. But I don't know if it's just about how easy the printer or the device, talking outside of printers, the technological device is to use. It's also about the use cases for people that want to adopt it. And I think that's the bigger problem is how do we, like that's one of the reasons that the industry's not doing so well, is because we haven't found that Lotus Notes for 3D printers, that internet for 3D printers. We don't have we have these amazing small use cases, like prosthetics with Jon and medical things, but we don't have a mass market adoption for use case for it.
And you know what? Maybe we won't. Maybe it is at that point a little bit more complicated. Thank you, Brad. Brad's joined us now. Hi, Brad. But I think of it like those who have, what do you want to call it, the gadget. Actually, I guess you call them makers now. But remember the people who had those really decked out garages with every tool you can imagine? I mean, how many people really have that? How many people are really carpenters? Maybe this is the same thing. I would like to see what the revenues that Shapeways is pulling, and here's a company that if you can design something, you can give it to them, and they kind of do some of the back end work in order to produce something. I think that market might be happening. And Chris, as you know, from printing a lot of other people's stuff, there is an organization, as well as Jon, that you can submit designs to and have other people print them for you. So maybe learning how to do it yourself isn't as important as be able to actually learn how to design something from a 3D perspective, and then sending it to somebody with the expertise with the actual mechanics. So, I mean, how many of us work on our cars? Who works on their car still?
Yeah.
Jon?
Adam here in the occipital office, for sure.
Well, on occasion, I still work on my car, but as you know, they've gotten more sophisticated with computers. So you normally have to take it to an expert. So why can't this be something similar? If you want to be a tinkerer, those tools are there for you. But if you want to get into 3D and create some professionals, you go to people like Chris, who does this for a living, or you go to Shapeways. So, I think we're going to see this evolve. And the same thing with actually true desktop publishing, not what people think they've created. If you want some real professional desktop 2D stuff, you go to a professional, graphics designer. Same thing. Same about web design, where you don't even have any tangibles. If you do it on your own, you don't have any expertise, it really shows. So I think we're going to see this.
That's the big question, though. It's true that if you want to get a professional print job done in any volume, you'll go to Kinko's or a print shop, and professionals will do the printing. But you can also have a laser printer that you buy at the store today. You open the box, you plug it in. Maybe you have to install the drivers. It's gotten a lot better than it used to be. And then it prints, and if it prints once, it's likely to print down the line. That's not the case now with printers. I suspect it will eventually be the case with printers.
That's an
And then the
interesting
question
point that you make about 2D printers.
Yeah.
Because amusingly enough, I just sent a job out to a printer today, and I've been doing print work since I was probably 16 or 18 years old, and you never get the thing right the first time. Like you always have to printers, like even still just 2D regular color printers, they still like 4-color presses, like whatever, they still vary from model to model and configuration to configuration, and depending on what kind of like ink they're using or toner or whatever, it's still a pain in the ass. Like it's just, I think that's just how it is. And it's funny also, Mike, that you brought up cars, because I've actually been thinking about 3D printers more and more, less like something that everybody's just going to have in their house in 5 years, and more like your buddy with a pickup truck. Like there's always room for the friend that has a pickup truck. Everybody needs that. Like at some point in their lives, you either pay a professional or like a professional to do it, or you have your buddy with a pickup truck. And I think that like a friend that has a really nice 3D printer is like, that's going to be something that becomes a thing and stays a thing for a little while. To where
Oh man, is that why I'm
That's you,
popular?
man. That's
Is
you.
that why my friends are hanging out with me? Is
You ever
that
notice
really
how
what
they
it
always bring
is?
an SD card with
I
them?
do. I noticed they come over to my office and they bring beer, and then they all want to hang out, and they want me to see their cool ideas, and I'm their best buddy.
I'm sorry to be the one to break it to you, man.
I see what's going on here.
Okay, well,
No, it's a good spot to be in. Free beer, man.
No, I think you're onto something. I'm the guy with the pickup truck.
Right, yeah, sort of. And that also, like, and lots of times the guy with the pickup truck also will know how to fix, like, the tiny shit that happens with your car. Like,
I'm cool with
like,
that. I'm cool
like,
with
a
being the
light
pickup
came
truck
on.
guy.
Yeah, and Chris that has the pickup truck knows why the light came on,
okay, well, let's move on to one other thing in the news. Otherwise, we'll never get out of here.
All right.
And so I guess that's my job. But essentially, I'm going to move on to the interview that I did yesterday. This is a 3D scanner done by some people in Australia. That's called and I got it wrong when I had the interview, but eora. How did he pronounce it? Eora 3D, which I guess is some meaning in Australian. So maybe if somebody you know that, it's actually an Aboriginal saying of some sort. So, and I don't remember. So that's stupid. You'll have to watch the interview. He says it in the beginning there. However, I thought this was really unique because you're finally starting to bring some unique ideas to the mobile. And it's interesting, I'm using this as a segue because I interviewed them, and I think there's a very cool product. But we also interviewed Drew and Matterinform because they came out with a similar little device that, in my opinion, is at that right price point for everybody to afford, and that's the bevel. And I've been kind of irritating him lately, saying, well, when can I have one? I want to show it. I want to be able to play with it, but he keeps telling me no. But, we went from 3D printing. How about 3D scanning? Where are we at with that? I think 2015 might be that year. And obviously, if you look through the notes, you'll see that I'm kind of crossing over to some of our questions, so I'll just go ahead and use this as an answer. So if you hadn't had a chance to look at the interview, I think these are some great guys. Obviously, there's a lot of fun people out there, so why don't you go ahead and when you get a chance, watch the interview. Very creative and cool technology. But as mentioned, we've had Drew on. We've talked about the bevel, which is a low-cost, almost a similar idea, not quite, where they also use a line laser and the phones. So a lot of these people, including our friends over there at Occipital, Phil, are using these smartphones, which are now, as a lot of people say, the same thing as a supercomputer in your pocket, to be able to provide this function. I'm waiting for the person to have this little attachment that's a 3D printer on your smartphone. Oh well, Chris, you'll have to do that. Like a little tiny,
I think that's beyond me.
A little hot end. Well, I don't know. There he is. Brad, maybe you're coming out with the micro SLA. A little cup with next to the little arm with a smart. Oh, okay, never mind. All right, well, let's talk about 3D scanning. Obviously, some people have the skills to design. Some people need copying machines. So is this the next copying machine? What do we see going on here? And obviously we've got two experts here. We've got Drew. And actually, Aaron, you've muted yourself, but you've got some computer vision experience as well. So maybe chime in. Is this the year for 2015 for 3D scanning, for personal 3D scanning? Go ahead, anybody.
I think it really is, and that's mainly because there's a lot of exciting devices coming out, and so there's all of these tablets and smartphones that are actually going to have 3D camera capabilities built in, and I think that's going to make it a lot more accessible to people. It's pretty much.
Yeah, and I think there's some emerging technologies too that are pretty exciting. I think where scanning really excels is taking something that already exists, organic shapes, whether it's like clay shaping or like some really organic geometry that you need to capture. That's kind of where it still really is widespread use, or there's widespread use. And like I recently invested in a seed of Space Claim, and I don't know if you're familiar with Space Claim. So I use that kind of in conjunction with SolidWorks. And Space Claim is not a parametric modeler like SolidWorks. It's a direct modeler. So you're actually kind of editing mesh files, kind of like when they're already triangulated. You can actually like copy features, move features, and kind of reverse engineer things from either 3D scan data or dummy geometry. And so those tools are evolving, as well as the hardware with the scanners, like Jake was mentioning, and I think that we're definitely getting into I think 2015 definitely already has seen a lot of mesh capability, a lot more kind of the steam is kind of building for the scanning revolution to happen, and I think devices like this one you were showing, Mike, they're just another example. I actually purchased a bevel on the Kickstarter. I backed him on Kickstarter too, and I'm definitely looking forward to getting my hands on that thing.
Well, let's go ahead and go right to Drew on this. I mean, obviously, not only is he the guy behind not only this product, but they have their own what do you want to call it, tabletop laser scanner. That's what they got all the money for in order to create the bevel. So you've got actually two products on the market. Where do you see this is going? I mean, hopefully, yeah, you're seeing this actually become something. But what is your goal? What is your objective creating these personal smartphone type 3D scanners?
Yeah, I mean, Chris, it's interesting that you said you're sort of talking about the year of 2015 was the year of the scanner, but I actually see it as the year of 3D, and 3D printers and 3D scanners are two applications. One being a use case for 3D content, another to be a creator of 3D content. But I think there's a lot more going to be going on this year than just scanners or 3D printers. We're going to see new ways of creating 3D content, like some of the software you mentioned, things that are more intuitive. I mean, you think about the way that we created our first 3D modeling programs, like 3ds Max, and they're still kind of the same. We're working with two-dimensional devices with two-dimensional controls to try to create three-dimensional objects. But I think there's going to be new ways of creating content. I think there's going to also be new ways of using it, and we're starting to see that pop up in all sorts of places. I mean, I'm super excited to see more people creating or developing products that are creating 3D content, like like eora, like Scene, the app. I think it's going to be really exciting. And it's not going to be specific to 3D scanning, but
Well, let's stay on 3D scanning for a moment, and actually, something you didn't mention, Drew, is that you have your own. Some of us are familiar with Sketchfab, but some of you may not know, because I think it may still be in beta, or is it released? Cashew?
Yeah, Cashew. It's actually opening up in the next couple of weeks publicly. But I mean, it's a site that you can share content and 3D content of different types. It's meant to be a hub to allow you to manage and take control of your own 3D content no matter where it's from. And it's a free site, free and open for everybody to just be able to share. We use it specifically in what we're doing. It works as a backend for Bevel. You can upload from our scanner, but it's not exclusive to that. In fact, we have a lot of people sharing content that they've created through. Actually, we have some great occipital stands on there. We have some content from Tinkercad. And it's more of a place to be able to share and embed content, to be able to use it properly, more like two-dimensional photos. How ubiquitous it is with all the technology that we already have. 3D content is just so cumbersome right now. So it's an attempt to try to break down that wall.
John, can I get your feedback on this? I know that obviously 3D printers were very important in moving Enable forward. How about personal 3D scanners? Do you see an application from a medical perspective?
There's a huge application. We would like to make it easy for someone to scan a body part and to then use that to get critical measurements and then use those measurements to generate 3D models of the hand or the arm device that we're going to print. But I gotta say, in my experience, and I haven't used a lot of them, all of these scanners produce something that looks really good, but if you get up close, there are a lot of little glitches, and so you have to go in and you have to manually smooth them and sculpt them and so on. This is the 21st century. It's a miracle that things work at all. And it's a miracle that they never really worked the way you hoped at the same time. I have yet to see a scanner that produces a high quality enough scan that we can really use it. But this may be the year. I think that
ours is pretty good.
They become common in laptops and devices, and as lots of people begin developing software that may be able to do the smoothing and the cleaning up and the pattern recognition, it may change. But right now, as with the printers themselves, they are remarkably useful and remarkably unfinished.
So there's a couple of people that are chiming in here. Obviously, we have two 3D scanner people. Toot my own little horn here, John. I'm working with the Shriners Children's Hospital over the last few months of using this for pressure fit or creating pressure fitted garments using the occipital and my 4eyes lens system, so that they can do exactly what you're saying. They right now have a $100,000, actually, I think a $70,000 scanner, but they actually have to bring the children there, and there's a lot of pain, obviously, and a lot of these. So what the system that I'm working with, which is the iOS 6, the structure sensor, it's kind of a wand or spray gun type device, and it allows me to move over the child body and record that. And I was concerned when I went up there that the measurements may not be sufficient, but I found out that because these children are in so much pain, the physical therapists who make the measurements have some real issues with getting, let's say, precise measurements. So they're very loose, and they found that
getting them to hold still or is difficult.
So we're working on that. I'm actually going to be going up to their major, what do you want to call it, donors organizational meeting in November to give a full demonstration. And so, yes, there is potential, but I do agree with you, John. We're at the infancy, and it's been taking a lot of work to get to a point. But I have to agree with both Phil as well as Drew. We have made some pretty good strides in the last year. So.
Yeah, I'll tell you one of the biggest growth points for us in terms of adoption of our technology has been in prosthetics and orthotics. We see tons of purchases and support and apps released in that area. Like there's Ohio Willowwood, there's Rodin 4D. There's Chrysalix, which is doing it for plastic surgery. Just the TechMed 3D, of course. Just tons of stuff this year in medical for these smaller devices like the structure sensor that used to be to do this at all, you would need a machine that cost 10 grand at least. And so we've lowered the price point a lot, and without sacrificing any of the quality. If anything, the quality is better than it was.
Yeah. So, but I still think there's a long ways to go. We are still moving there.
Absolutely.
You know, John, you did mention, or somebody did, about these being built into laptops. I just ordered the new HP Surface Killer, as they call it, which just so happened to have a RealSense R200 built into it. Not many. They don't make a big deal of it, but yes, it's built into there. So if you're looking for a tablet that has something, and we're not talking just regular tablet. This is a slimline tablet.
That's
using
actually
a
out now?
Core M1. I'm sorry?
It's going to be out on. It's going to be out on November 7th. Playing with the camera that's going to be in it, the Intel R200 for our application, because I think you've seen our application, and for people thinking about sort of indoor scanning applications, it's good for sort of understanding the basic of a room and the floor. It's not going to be good enough to scan an object. The Occipital's recent SDK, basically the 0.5, is pretty much the only thing that you can really scan an object with a non-professional. But yeah, the Intel is exciting for basically for room capture.
Well, the other important thing is it's actually being built in, and as I showed on my show the other day, there's a good reason for that, because it's like a really tiny, slim item. In fact, I have been working with Aaron, and I said, Aaron, you know, I can't really tell you that I've tested it because I lost it. It has a magnet on it, and it was on like the front end of my workbench, and I couldn't find the damn thing. I said, "What is this thing?" Oh, that's the sensors. So they've gotten to the point that you'll lose them.
That totally happened at our office too.
Okay, so let's move on to the next item, and that is, let me jump back to my screen. You know, the other thing that I think is going to make a big difference is the smarts in 3D printers. And we're starting to see more and more color screens, Wi-Fi capability, more intuitive controls. No more of these very complex delta points or XY coordinates. They're becoming more and more intuitive. And so this is another, person, and there's other people besides this particular gentleman who, and I guess I call it the Replicape, are working on intelligent agents in order to improve the functionality. So the UX provides a simple, I want to make this thing, do it, I guess is the approach, and let the actual computer, like in many other things, actually produce it for you.
Yeah, because that's what computers are good at. Computers are good at math. Like, that's what they do, orders of magnitude better than us. I really think that's the problem with the current 3D printing landscape, is that there's some decent software out there, but even the software that's good still kind of sucks. Like it's not smart enough about like choosing sensible defaults for a given print regarding like speed, like all that kind of stuff. That's really when things start to get widely adopted, is when we figure out the sensible defaults. So the thousands of things that, unless you know about them, are going to screw you up, you never have to think about them anymore. And that's why the iPhone is so, that's why the iPhone is so widely adopted. That's why any piece of technology becomes great when a person can use it without having to have any kind of deep knowledge of how it actually works. And kind of where
John,
we are right now.
Yeah, but I mean that's the challenge, and there's a social and a psychological challenge there already, because right now, for reasons we've already talked about, the people who are programming these things, buying them and using them, if they're survivors, they're tinkerers. They like, and I think I'm talking to everybody in this room here, they actually like all of that problem solving, all of that knob twiddling, all of that figuring it out.
I hate it now. I used to be that guy, but I have too much to do.
Well, that's right. I mean, it turns out that life is short. But the point is, for many of the people who hang in there, this stuff causes brain damage, in the sense that you lose the ability to remember what a normal person really wants. And that's what makes things like, a well-designed device, like, to pick the cliche example, an iPhone so interesting.
That's one of the reasons why that's one of the reasons I really do appreciate companies that send out the surveys, and then I fill them out. I'm one of those people that actually fills out the surveys with like the honest answers, because I feel like I identify so many problems every day in the whole workflow. I mean, because you're totally right. Like the printers still don't know if they're out of filament. They don't know if they're off of zero, or they don't know. So yeah, I mean, there's a million different little problems that I run into every day doing this gig, and I think that's another thing where not only do the manufacturers really need to put those surveys out there and survey the user base, hey, what can we do better? What could we? Because I think they'd identify a million different markets that they could get into immediately. You know what I mean? But I think it's also our part as the users to go on and kind of fill them out and give feedback, even if they don't ask for it. I give feedback whether people ask for it or not.
Well, that's great, but my real point is that the current users are probably not who the industry needs to design for.
Sure.
It needs to design for people who have, I mean, for example, who have problems to solve. We have parents who are otherwise not geeks who want, they've heard that people are building 3D printers and they want one for their child. Now, in some cases, they're actually going to slog their way through it, and they're going to become tinkerers. And in a few cases, they're going to find that they like it because there is a fascination to it. But what they really wanted was to be able to print the damn mechanical hand as easily as they could print a 2D, page on a 2D
on an
printer.
Epson, yeah, or a photo or whatever.
And it's not an unreasonable ambition, and it will happen eventually. And the people who are currently using them and the people who are currently building them have got to remember that they are not typical.
John, I'd like to pipe in on that. Oops, I'm sorry, I cut you off there.
Okay. No.
So, I don't know, again, I'm going to be showing my age. One of the things I did when I was a kid, into my early teens, is I did a lot of modeling. Where you went out and you bought an Airfix.
You were making the arrowheads, right, by the cave?
Yeah, ha ha ha. But essentially, I would go out, and it included a ton of parts on these plastic trees, and you needed glue. Back then, you could get high off the glue.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was, it's still a fairly large industry, but you had to have a little bit of skill. You had to have the ability to take something from a 3D, 2D illustrations that normally didn't have much as far as maybe some exploded views, and put them together. But a lot of people are modelers. Some were better than others. If you've seen some of the results, some people did. But, I mean, it wasn't something everybody did. So why does this really need to get as simple as printing? Because maybe it's not. Maybe, because, you can go out and make your own model, or you can go somewhere and get a fully assembled object that represents that for many times more or sometimes just as much. I mean, we talked about shapeways earlier. Maybe that's where the shapeways come in. If you want to take something and get an idea done, you send it to them. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's a market for all these things, and as the market becomes more saturated, obviously how competitive you are is very important. And I think naturally the machines that are more evolved and make it easier, they're going to get the better ratings on Amazon or the better ratings online, and more people are going to adopt them and buy them. And so yeah, I think that this all these little problems right now, I think we're definitely still at the very first part of the early majority phase, if even there yet. If 3D printing in fact does become this, in everybody's home, who knows? I can't predict the future, so who knows where it's gonna go? But yeah, I mean, I envision that it will eventually touch everyone, every place. Whether it's the auto parts store or the Walmart, you'll have some lab you can go to. A parts oven, who knows? But yeah, I think that they're definitely, we're still in the infancy of seeing these things evolved and the more features, and yeah, eventually, I mean, we've already within 3 years we already have, only 3 years ago nobody had even heard of RepRap, or RepRap 4 years, let's say 4 years ago, RepRap wasn't even a, yeah. I mean, it's incredibly short amount of time that we've this kind of movement has even existed, and I mean within 3 years we already have machines that, like I said, 5 minutes you can pull out a printer and get up and printing to some degree.
Look,
All right.
Look a year ago, the state-of-the-art 3D printer machine that was available for purchase a year ago just looks like crap to us now. It looks like a junky toy. Like you wouldn't even give it to a child now. So, yeah, give it another 3 years. Like, I mean, imagine once we can cheaply and reliably and safely print protein.
All right, Brad.
That happens.
I'm gonna suck you into this conversation, Brad, because you're too quiet over there in stockroom land. That's a very surreal. I need to make sure that I have that on long enough to capture that.
Brad's like me. We're stuck in dungeons all day.
No,
working with robots. We're like the robot slave drivers.
just hope that they don't become self-aware. Then you're in trouble.
Yeah. Oh, trust me, I think of that.
Did I just turn? So, Brad, why don't you chime in here? As mentioned, he's created his own little 3D printer based on SLA, so he's got a little bit of experience that some of us don't because he went on Kickstarter, and Drew has that same experience. Kickstarter Indiegogo is a whole nother world, the responsibilities in that go along with it. So, what's your opinion? You think this is going to be in your home, Mr. Inventory Man?
So, I don't know. Maybe I'm a pessimist, but I feel like 3D printing as it currently stands I do also want to make a correction. I think I bought my first M2 Maker Gear in, December of 2012. So that's almost 3 years, and that's still my preferred printer. So I don't know that it's really the printers that sort of need help. I think that if this were easy, none of us would be into it, and like that's one of the things that interests me. I know that I've had some of the easier printers like Zortrax, Affinia, things that print superbly, but they just sort of lose my interest. And I think we have to realize that we are ultimately not the individuals that are the target for like the 3D revolution. It's like we like tinkering and we like it hard, and if it were easy, we probably wouldn't be interested. And I don't know that FDM is going to be the bridge that gets my dad making something in his house. I think that's we're looking at SLS or probably not even resin printing, but SLS or other things that like somebody was mentioning. There's all with FDM, there's all these print variables, and I think that with let's say sintered nylon, for example, it's already becoming a little bit mainstream. And you don't have to design parts to be 3D printed. There's inherent support in them. And I think that, unless we are building our parts in something that's suspended, that doesn't require calibration, that doesn't require all of these settings to be tweaked, I don't know that this FDM will become what we think the natural progression will be. And I don't know if that's sort of pessimistic, but I do think there is a little bit of, people are, 3D printing is was this big deal, and I think people are kind of realizing now, well, there's a lot of thunder outside. I don't know if you can hear that. But.
Wow, that's in Santa Barbara, huh?
Yeah.
We're going to get rain, people. Rain in California.
Oh, it's a dry thunder, so we're just getting fires.
Yeah.
All right. I cannot remember the last time it rained in San Francisco. It's terrifying.
Well, it's rained a little bit where I'm at. So let me segue. We're talking about FDM, so let's talk about the person or the group that probably has become most famous for FDM, and that's MakerBot. And we also have heard lately in the news that MakerBot has made some downsizing moves. So does that mean we're going to see the end of MakerBot? Did they have their heyday? They're going to be gone? Is this just the first of many? What's your opinion? Brad, I'll leave you up, and you can talk about it.
I don't know. I don't want to talk about MakerBot, but
you have to.
I mean, it's tough. I think that there's a hype train, and I think one of the things that's difficult, especially with me, is like say a small business, right? Like I build small quantities of printers on a lead time. I think that you can run into this problem where the demand is so variable that if you build up a big company and you have all of the stock and the wind changes, you're done. And you know, I mean, MakerBot has their own problems, right? I mean, they probably have done a lot of this themselves, but it's tough to say. I don't even remember what the question was. But
Essentially, well, it's basically MakerBot is going downhill, to put it flatly.
yeah, I mean,
Actually,
Saturn's out of business too. I think it's just, I don't know that it's indicative of an industry decline, but I think it's just sort of bad business practices on their part. I mean, the Gen 5 was a disaster for them. It could have easily turned them into a billion, I don't know if they're $1 billion valuation already, but I mean, had the Gen 5 been good, I mean, we wouldn't have any of this conversation.
Nope. Anybody else want to chime in? John?
Yeah, I'll just remind you that when the internet bubble began to burst, even before it began to burst, you had companies dropping like flies. At that particular era, people were still saying, is Amazon ever going to turn a profit?
Yeah, I remember.
You know, time passes, and most of those companies are gone, but the basic technology, the basic concept of web-based e-commerce is a major fact of life. And so, you know, MakerBot's demise, maybe its demise and recovery, it really doesn't say much about the industry or the future of those machines. I suspect that those machines, maybe they're not FDM, but they may well be, are going to be around and they're going to be ubiquitous. And it's probably still going to be the case that if you want to do something serious or in volume, you'll use Amazon Web Services 3D printing, and they'll drone it to your home within hours.
Or you call your buddy with a pickup truck.
Or you call your buddy with a pickup truck, and the drone delivers his pickup truck. I mean, what the hell?
Yeah, that would be a pretty big drone.
Don't forget that MakerBot is also owned by Stratasys, and they're the big guys in the field right now, and they've been in the 3D printing business for years, way longer than all of us have been. So like MakerBot is just a brand for them, and it's very unlikely that they will ever stop selling or be gone. They might eat up the brand, but they'll always have a space for a more consumer or a more prosumer level 3D printer.
Yeah, you raise a good point about their parent company. I think part of this is, honestly, they grew a little bit too quickly, too big, too fast, and also I think a little bit of it is just corporate growing pains, being a good citizen of their parent company and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I think disagree actually. I think that they are feeling the burn just like everybody else is in the 3D printer area, because there's a super large majority of companies that are just swarming the market, and they're all sharing the same market share, and they are all fighting for the same customers. There's a little bit of overlap, but it's not like Chris or Mike or own more than, well, maybe we own more than 4 3D printers, but most of the sort of tinkerers out there don't own more than 2 if they're lucky. So I mean, they're all trying to share the same revenue streams without the real growth in the industry that we were all expecting. So I think they're the first to do it. And I think that they're the first to do it because they have the experience in business to know that they need to downscale before it gets worse. But I think Mike and Chris, I think you're right that you're going to start seeing companies drop like flies in the next year that are only focused on 3D printing for consumer level. I think you'll see things like Stratasys Shapeways do really well. But I think that you'll see like the home 3D printers, the smaller companies, just drop out.
Yeah. And totally agree. And if I can provide one more thing before I move on to this, I think you made some good points, Drew, that they're owned by a very large company with a lot of business sense. They have a lot of years, and they're just doing what a lot of businesses do, especially large ones. When they see that the profits aren't there, the revenues aren't there, you pull back. You fire people. You reduce those costs, and that's what big companies do, and that's all you're seeing there. I do think that Maker made a big blunder by putting a product out there that wasn't really tested. It had some novel ideas, and I really think, as Brad said, that was a problem. And so you're seeing the effects of that. But as Drew just mentioned, we're going to see more of this. I think geez, sorry I can't keep all the names straight here, but as John made the comment, it is like the internet bubble, and maybe it's time for it to burst a little bit. Lots of fun people out there, but now it's like, okay, who's really going to buy this? Who's going to be in here for the long haul and move on with it? So, okay, I think we've kind of beat that one down. So I'm going to move on to the next item, which is, this is where I think we may see more movement, and that's in the medical realm. As John has been a part of with the Enable, this more than anything I think has put a lot of attention on the possibilities of personalized 3D printing or tangible production, because you can cater things to the individual. And that's, I think, the huge strength of the personal 3D print movement. And so let's kind of talk about that. And if in my own case, I 3D printed my wife's skull right here next to me, which kind of went viral because her 3D surgeon, her neurosurgeon, got his hands on it for the first time, and this is when a lot of people weren't even aware of it, and this was just early 2014. Now if you look in the news, everybody's 3D printing something from any part of the body. So is this the next area that we're really going to see in the term personal, because it truly is personal printing or tangible scanning, whatever. In these cases, you were done from CTs and MRIs. So John, I'm going to leave with you, since you probably have a lot more to do with this than most people here. So go ahead.
Well, I think it is true that the potential for mass customization and for whether that's done by one big factory that churns out lots and lots of these things, or as in our case, by a whole community of 5,000-6,000 people, each with their own printer, each doing customization. The ability of these machines to make unique objects at, without retooling costs is critical to the sweet spot. And since people are all different, and since people are likely to invest real money in things that are uniquely adapted to them, that probably is a really important place to look. And that
the other thing to add to that is, as in the case of the Enable movement, the cost. As you're probably aware, prosthetics, especially when they are individualized, are extremely expensive, and you disrupted is a light word. How about nuclear attack that whole industry? You went from thousands of dollars for prosthetics to tens of dollars. So I think this has been the major disruptor. Anybody else want to move into this? Obviously, both John and I are.
Let me just say, by the way, because I've gotten very good these days at talking to and hearing from people in the industry. They don't consider that they're under nuclear attack. They think that we've demonstrated that there's some very different and new options available. And I'm actually gotten very concerned about saying, look, let's recognize that these devices we're producing, and for kids, this is this is totally not a complaint. They are toys compared to those industrial strength $1,000 medical grade devices. They're different things. The professional prosthetists say those are toys. The kids say, what's your point? These are toys. It's great. But they're really not the equivalent devices. And from the prosthetist point of view, we've simply demonstrated that a new tool is available, and a new market, probably 10 to 100 times larger than the one the industry has already hit, has been demonstrated. It's not like a thermonuclear attack, although it is clearly disruptive.
I didn't say, because I've also had some feedback from them, that we weren't destroying them. Essentially, the media has identified it as that, but more importantly, we have brought attention to it. And I do know that some of the prosthetics are, whatever the word is for it. For instance, I know some orthopedics, they're really embracing this because it's a revolutionary technology that allows them to get their products out quicker. Now, there's some that feel that you still needed the old techniques, but there are many people that don't seem to embrace technology, move along in all kinds of fields. So yes, I only said it in the sense that Enable, because the amount of attention they've received, obviously has been a huge disruptor. And I think disruptor doesn't need to be a negative word. It's making
Well, I think
people
that's
think
right.
differently.
I think that's right. I don't object to the word disruptor. I'm a little uneasy with thermonuclear attack, dude.
Well, I got attention. So anybody else want to chime in on the medical aspect of this? Chris, you've actually been working with something a little unique, and I still want to get you on for your own interview. You've been working with veterinarians. In fact, I think you said your dog had some issues. You were able to use.
Yeah, and that is another place. I think another part of this whole movement is obviously just the applications. Is we're kind of just still in the infancy of not only the applications but the adoption of the applications. So, like the applications, there's a lot out there. Like one of the big ones that most people don't even realize is manufacturing jigs and fixtures. You know, like when there's manufacturing companies or engineering companies, I mean, I use these things every day. Things like this that are simple things that you can make on a 3D printer in just an hour, you know, and have this super vital fixture that might save you hours every day or make a job possible that otherwise wouldn't. You know, well, this has been around. This process has been around for 10 years, you know, or more with 3D printing. But whether it's been adopted or not, that's a whole other thing. So yeah, with the veterinarian work and the doctors, you know, you're seeing pre-op planning is evolving. Obviously, having a 3D model and being able to see it in real size, one-to-one scale to help plan a surgery, not only is it saving time and maybe even save lives. I mean, I just read an article the other day that was right on the front page of Stratasys website right now. You can go to Stratasys website right now. It's right on the front page. Help a polyjetted model of her heart helped with the pre-op planning, and that really, I mean, that could make or break. Surgery is a very delicate process, and I think so. So I think you have these kind of applications that are being adopted and more doctors. Well, then one guy sees some auxiliary benefit over here to using it, and another guy and then they get together and a whole other application is born. And so I think the other one, I mean, you mentioned last week, I think you brought it up in the news last Friday episode, that you know, we're seeing the emergence of silicone printers, so that it actually is more like a human organ. So all the parts that I'm doing for pre-op planning are all out of ABS. So it's like bones and stuff like that. And it's good for size and to see it in real life, but it's not actually really, you know, if they want to cut into it, it's not a very good indicator of flesh or an organ. Whereas the silicone, or you know, maybe some polyjet maybe some polyjet machine in the future will be able to make these models that are, you know, very similar to human tissue.
Well, and on that note, I was hoping to have Anderson Ta here, but he couldn't make it. But as you're aware of, we've talked about it a couple times on our show and did an interview with them. But at Rice University and other locations, we are actually looking at printing tissues. And in the case of Rice University, the capillary and waste systems. So we're seeing movement in that area. So not only do you have to create artificial or tangible object, we can literally start producing. Now, both Anderson Ta and I can't think of his name now, the one that's above him, they indicate we're still, I'm sorry?
Jordan Miller.
Thank you. Jordan, he pretty much says we're still a few years out, and some of the things we're seeing now are a little bit more media hype than they should be, but we're making a lot of progress, and you're seeing more and more of that in the news. So not only will you be able to use artificial materials, but you'll be able to actually use biological components as well. to kind of like replace these things. So, I mean, sad that we don't have somebody here to actually talk more about that. So again, when I mentioned the word personal, and again, John, I apologize for using the word nuclear. That is a little bit overstated. I am not in any way a warmonger, just to let everybody know.
I'd be less offended if you said nuclear.
Okay,
Love
so
you, Mike.
We have to be offensive to someone. Come on.
no.
No, and again, Mike, this just is like, I think where we're going to start to see a lot of growth is not just in one novel approach to anything necessarily. Maybe we are, I don't know. But I think it's going to be like the combination of all these ingredients. I mean, a perfect example from the medical field that I mean, is the software for, like with your wife's situation, where, Mike printed his wife's skull, and it helped in the pre-op planning stage for her, and possibly saved her eye, right?
Well, there's a possible. The whole point is that the surgery wasn't done. The atrophy to the optic nerve would eventually have caused her. So, bringing to attention and bringing the, as they call them, 3D volume renders and the tangible skulls, which wasn't actually used in surgery, but the point is it started bringing attention to how a lot of this stuff can be used. But I guess the point is, this is the more personal. Not that you would be able to do it, even though I did. The point is, it now is things that we can do with 3D fabrication and 3D scanning that we've been doing for some time now, CT and MRI, that are more individual and personal to the individual. And so I guess that's what I mean from that particular perspective. And as John so eloquently identified, that's where the Enable program has gone. And for the children, this was a godsend, especially and it's, another thing that John didn't mention is that children grow. And it can be very expensive to continuously get new prosthetics, and this is perfect for them. So, and there was some questions mentioned at MedX, but I'll stop from.
So there is one other point to make, which is that
big difference.
I'm sorry, Mary.
Go ahead, John.
I was just going to say there's one other point to make, which is that you think about the potential of this kind of thing in areas that don't have factories, in the developing world, for example. For all the talk that we've done about how much tinkering is required, you can still imagine one room in some village with one tinkerer and one or maybe a backup 3D printer who can now make a warehouse worth of items in low volume as needed. And that's going to be huge. That's going to be huge. And that's true even if it is labor intensive. The versatility of these devices compared to traditional, factory-based manufacturing is a game changer.
It's like Walmart in the size of a 1,000 square foot office.
That's right.
that one tinkerer can change hundreds and hundreds of lives.
You need lawn chairs
himself with a printer,
You order online, you order the lawn chairs online, and I have them for you tomorrow. No shipping necessary,
That's right.
And then meanwhile, there's like the recycling truck backs up to your thing, right? Backs up to your factory, your little 1,000 square foot room or whatever, and dumps in plastic bottles, and it churns them up, and then that's your filament for your. That's it. I think it could go. I think that's these are realistic scenarios.
That's the stuff that's the most exciting
if you
to
look
me, honestly.
75 years ago, and you tried to show up a day in the life of a person in 2015, they'd be telling you you're crazy. What are you talking about? Talking on a Google Hangout? Are you crazy?
Colin, is that something that you could just go and start doing now? Like, I know someone that's gone and done like a whole ton of like eye surgeries in the developing world, and it's amazing how many people he's helped basically be able to see. Is that something where someone could just start doing that now, John, or is it not like quite at that stage yet?
Well, we're trying. We have a project going in Haiti where we're trying to see if we can't sort of set up an indigenous 3D printing prosthetics clinic.
Yep.
Frankly, the technology is not the biggest problem. It's a problem, but the social systems, figuring out with our funding, our current funding at least, figuring out how to sustain that tinkerer who's really going to learn the craft and be able to count on being there for a few years is still an unsolved problem. The economics of this, frankly, haven't been worked out. If you think about the value of changing a life this way, and the notion that one person per small city could turn 1,000 people or 100 people from candidates for street beggary into cutting-edge technological leaders, the fact that the fact that we don't have the money to do that is sort of a ironic and sad commentary just on the rate of change. Over time, I'd like to think organizations like the Enable Community Foundation are going to become the repository of development money that says, you know, this is a really good way to create self-sufficiency and mutual aid and indigenous medical care all over the world. And so we're exploring it. But the truth is, I'm describing to you social and economic challenges that are overlaid on the relatively small problem that the machines are not as reliable as you would like them to be. You know, it's
interesting about
turmoil and it's change. We're working on it.
It seems like the machines also, you know, help with the slow change, and that if you can 3D print orthotics even, or even like very like low, you know, like low cost and not super high quality prosthetics, these you know, people that once couldn't leave their house due to pain or just the logistics of the situation now can, and they're infinitely more likely to have decent lives.
Well, that's right. That's right.
And that's what's so exciting to me about this stuff, and why I'm so happy that like stuff like our little scanner is being used for like prosthetics and orthotics, because as someone who wears orthotics every day, it makes a huge difference to me in just what I feel like I can do. Like, am I wearing my inserts today? I can go bowling.
Okay, well, Phil, on that note, obviously we've talked about
We're out of shape.
how it can really improve the personal side of things, and I think we're going to see more of it.
That matters so much.
Yeah, and actually, I had a good story the other day, and this is going to segue into my next comment. You know, part of all this stuff is now pushing virtual reality into things, and one of the things that they did up at the Shriners after I introduced them some new technology that really wasn't affordable before is that there was a child who had such severe pain that it was very difficult to get measurements and work with them. But they went in there with my NeoDVR Value Edition glasses with an iPhone and put some dinosaurs on it, and the kid was so enthralled with it that he stood there and he didn't stand, he was laying there, and they were able to make all the measurements, and he was compliant, and it was really fun for them. And I thought, you know, that actually was very emotional to me, because that's been my objective, is to try and introduce this stuff, because you've seen articles, you've seen research papers on how they have found this to work, but the VR technology has been expensive over time. And now you've got people like Asfand, who's really bringing the cost down. You've got people like Steve from Korea, who's got a $20 pair of VR glasses that you can do, and then hopefully I will make a mark there with my NeoDVR loop. But essentially, there's a lot of low-cost stuff there that we can now do things and bring it to people, as John has already alluded to, that hasn't been done before. And this is what excites me, so I've been pushing forward with that. So that segues into my next thing. VR is another hot topic this year and last year. We have Sony, we have Asfand, we even have the HTC Vive Valve combination that's getting a lot of attention. Phil, as you were at AWE, there was tons of people there, including occipital with something that I've been working with them on called, I call it NeoDVR, where you literally can walk around in this VR environment, which I think is super cool. Too bad, Chris, you didn't come over. You could have a chance to actually try that for yourself, but you
Yeah,
didn't.
it was a hell of a demo.
I mean, I see a huge potential there, but what do we see about that in 3D design? Are we going to see this kind of crossover? I mean, I've been thinking already, why do I need to print something? I can just look at it, walk up to it, look around it, go
Holodeck.
underneath it. It is the holodeck. I mean, it is
The
hard. If
Matrix
you've never
That's
not
what we're working
experienced
towards.
it.
I prefer more holodeck than Matrix, thanks.
That's a good point. But
I want to get in fights with Moriarty and stuff, you know?
Yeah.
okay, so anybody want to provide some feedback? John, are you seeing any applications for the VR perspective of, you know, as I said, 3D entails a lot of things, and I think 3D is very important, both the stereo imaging capability of having something over each eye, and then the ability to move around in it as though you're actually there. Do you see some benefits to that?
Sure, I can well imagine, and I watch those science fiction movies, but I haven't seen it yet, and I don't know. I do think that these gawky headsets that separate you from the real world are again a transitional technology. But I've seen really good
Totally.
see-through glass heads-up displays in very limited runs where you have a virtual image suspended while wearing lightweight glasses, and when those hit the market, it'll be a new game. But I'm not seeing them arriving yet. Google Glass, for example, had a...
As we're talking, or as you're talking, I am putting together what you're talking about. I did a little... Do you guys remember the movie, The Man with the Golden Gun, the James Bond movie, where the, what's his name, Scaramanga, the assassin, was able to assemble through some parts that he had on his body? I kind of feel like that right now. But essentially, this is an iPhone 6. This is a Bluetooth grip, which allows me to hold it. These are some VR glasses. Can you see it?
I tried mine today with the Dive. You gave me one of these, and I put it on today. There's a Dive. They have a video. YouTube actually now has YouTube actually has VR videos you can watch.
Okay.
It's compatible with, because this is Google Cardboard compatible, right?
Yeah. So I now have a headset that you just put in front of your eyes, and you can be walking around in your VR. And if you can look at my screen here, I'll put it up. Give me a moment. Of course, obviously, the demos, when you want them to work, don't work. This is made in the Unity 3D, and there we go. Yeah. Okay. And this is Van Gogh's bedroom.
Well, see, it's not working for me.
It's
Yeah, what's going on?
I'm in there.
However,
Where am I going?
but I am now, and I can walk around, sit on the bed if I want to.
What a
Actually,
trip.
I can. But I am now be able to do this with a few components underneath. About $800 for everything. Well, actually, I guess the new 6S Plus is a little more expensive than that. But I'm making a version of this for the children at Shriners that uses a little iPod Touch for $200. But with the same kind of little goggle type system, you just put it up to your eyes like that. So, and then you can walk around in it. So how cool is that? I don't
Very
know. I'm
cool.
excited about it. You know, and Phil left us here. I guess his battery died. But I wanted to show him that because it's actually their little product. But I mean, I think we're going to see more of this. Android, the Google, what is it called? The Project Tango will have something similar to that as soon as they can get it into a phone, which both Aaron and I have been hoping would happen sooner than later. You know, Aaron hasn't talked a lot about what he does, so hopefully I can give him a moment. He has been using more augmented reality type stuff, and I will let him kind of talk a little bit about it. But I think this is how 3D, in fact, him and I have been working on a new case system that we're going to launch or announce soon to provide that. So you got something to show us there, Aaron?
Sure. Sure. So basically, the thing that we do is we take 3D pictures of a room, and you can pretty much do, anything that you want as far as placing objects in that room. And I won't show the actual capture process, but it's very simple. It's sort of what's amazing about the structure sensor is that it's able to do this so simply. But so here's basically, this is you just press a button and you get this 3D capture of a room, and then you can pretty much move an object around. I can't do it. There we go. I can rotate it with my iPad facing the camera. But yeah, it's pretty much very, very easy to go through, take a 3D picture of a room, and then you can put any piece of furniture, any other object, like some sort of thing you might want to put in a retail store or whatever else. And so that's exactly what we do, is we capture rooms, place objects, and we capture objects also with the structure sensor, but that's advanced users.
So, I mean, the whole point of why I'm bringing this up is that, we've been talking about 3D printing and we're talking about 3D scanning, but now we can kind of combine everything and do our prototyping all in the virtual world, test fitting and everything else. In fact, I think Elon Musk alluded to that back in, remember, Chris, in that seminar we did in 2013, we showed that little video, and who knows what he's been doing since then, because he is Iron Man. But I see that, in my opinion, this is another offshoot that's really going to become something. That's just my opinion. Anybody else want to provide some feedback? We're dropping like flies there.
I'd love to, actually, because you guys talked about the correlation between 3D printers and 2D printers earlier in the segment, and we talked about using them, as a means to an end. But then you also mentioned about how augmented reality and VR is becoming, could become a replacement for even that technology. And I think that first of all, I very much agree. I mean, we're seeing an exponential growth in technology, like we usually do in the technological field, and we're skipping over segments, like sections of the growth that we can look back on in history and see, like two-dimensional printers. We had a very strong use case for them in the home, and so they were adopted. But now, I use services like Walmart or printing even just everyday stuff. The only place I have a two-dimensional printer is actually in the office. And so like I think that with 3D printing we can kind of skip over that as well. But with VR, I mean, maybe that's just what's going to happen is that VR and augmented reality are going to find the reasons to use three-dimensional content a lot more than just 3D printing, and 3D printing becomes something more of an offshoot, and VR just I think is going to pick up the rest of the pieces.
Well, we shall see. Okay, so finally, before we get into, and again, this is just, for those who want to hang on, but one item that I want to leave off with is, okay, if we're not stagnant, what would you like to see happen to make this more accessible to either yourself or to others? And Chris, I'll start with you. You're on the left there. What do you want to see, making it more accessible to others or yourself?
Well, for one, I'm happy to see the evolution of the tools necessary to design and create. And I personally, obviously I'm a firm believer. I've seen a lot of the practical examples of cloud computing just emerging over the last 5 to 10 years, and obviously there's a lot of steam behind that whole momentum, or behind that whole movement of cloud computing. So I definitely and also being platform agnostic, being able to do work and design across multiple devices. And I think Onshape is really a great tool for beginners to all the way to professional people that want a cheaper solution that's in the cloud. But I think I would like to see more tools like Fusion 360, Autodesk's kind of cloud CAD, and I'd like to see more design and making solutions that are kind of available kind of on the cloud or even on the device, but maybe cross-platform and be able to kind of move your design files around. That's where I want to see people be able to create stuff easier.
Drew?
It's funny. I mean, Chris, you covered a lot there, but I agree. I mean, I think it's all about just creating content. We need more ways of creating content than just scanners, I think we'll see them. But in order for it to be accessible, we need the content there for people to pick it up in other ways. We have a lot of use cases for 3D content. We just don't have the means to be able to create it as easily as we should.
Aaron?
I think that the thing that needs to happen here, and this is a little bit tooting my own horn because it's what we work on, but I think that in order for it to really be accessible to users, it has to be as easy as taking a photo or taking a video, and that then actually using it has to be as easier than basically moving things around in Word or PowerPoint, and that does sort of restrict what sorts of 3D content you might have people capturing at this time or what they would do with it. But basically, I think that like attacking those use cases and making it easier is really important. And it's too bad that Phil's not here, because that's one of the things that Occipital has made possible, is just how good their SDK is, that it enables that sort of interaction on apps built in their platform that users can actually trust, and it can be just as easy as taking a photo. And so I think we're starting to get there. We're clearly not perfect, but
we're getting there.
Yeah. Yes.
And John?
Well, I think everyone is saying accessibility, which I think means accessibility to everyone, even if they are not high-level techno geeks, and I endorse that. I think that's really important. And by the way, I want to put in a plug for our community, which is filled with people, some of whom are inveterate tinkerers, and some of whom just want to help people or be a part of this humanitarian effort. Is a really interesting laboratory for exploring a diverse community that is highly motivated to get things done. So if you can then begin testing your tools on that community, you may really be able to get a portal into the community of the future. But I also want to point out that I think everything that's been said is right, and that saying as easy as to take a picture is a really nice concept. But I'll point out that that 4,000 years ago there were people sitting around campfires telling stories to each other and producing these incredibly rich 3D visualization in the minds of their listeners. And I think you shouldn't assume that optics and mechanics are the be-all for what you're looking for in being able to do the essential thing, which is to turn one person's ideas into another person's, in this case, physical reality. And it could well be that word pictures or hand gestures or metaphors become the way regular people express, as they used to express, a vision of something that ought to be real. How's that for a philosophical finale?
There you go.
That is excellent. Thank you, John. And if my wife was here, she would be nodding her head vigorously. She would say, "Get outside, you geeks. Go explore the world, start talking to people, and exercising the ability to use your own creativity." So I'll leave it on that. Thank you, John. I think it was well said. I think, if anything, all of us instill our own creativity and using the tools that we have, and I think that's the most important thing, is be able to express ourselves and do it in such a way that it's exciting for ourselves, and, as John said, making it available to others, either in the form of words, images, or however it wants to be done. So I have 3 other areas, and you're welcome to participate, and that is kind of what kind of cool 3D items did you work with in the last month, and then what smile or frown did this item or items give you, and then if you got any tips or tricks. I'll just kind of throw them all in to kind of get through this, and John, I'll stay with you. So what have you seen that you're pretty excited about?
you know, we've got some people in my lab and in the community who are now working on a new framework for mechanical arms in which you can now interchange a variety of hand types with a variety of forearm types with a variety of elbow joints with a variety of forearms. And that framework, which is modular and interchangeable, I think is going to really liberate things. So that's huge. And by the way, one of the techniques that we're doing a lot with is to 3D print, ironically, things which are often flat, even though, and then to thermoform them. And with FDM, you get a much stronger object, and of course, it opens up the possibility that you can now shape it into structures that would be very hard to print with support. So that's really cool, and I'm very excited about it. What was your second question?
Oh, that essentially was, you know, is there anything that put a smile or a frown on you? Obviously, you had a big smile with that, so we'll leave that.
There's
and
that.
then do you have any tips or tricks for us out here in the audience?
Okay, so that was a threefer. So seeing a cool device is what I'm excited about. Seeing it and actually seeing it used by a kid is a hugely rewarding kind of a thing. And the tip I'll give you is, in fact, to look into what apparently is not a widely known fact, which is that with PLA, you can just put it in really hot water. With ABS, you can use a hairdryer, and you can mold it into interesting shapes, and that opens up all sorts of possibilities. The other tip I'm going to use here, though, is do that, use duct tape. Don't do all of your design in 3D design. First, get the basic geometric and mechanical principles right the fastest imaginable way possible. And often I watch people working with their favorite tools, the 3D design program, to do something that they could have done easier with scissors, paper, and Scotch tape. So don't fall into that trap. That's my tip.
And I'll add to that, John.
Start with pencil and paper.
Attaboy.
It's easier.
I use gaffer's tape. It has a black, well, actually you can get it in different colors, but that's my tool of trade. So thank you, John. So Aaron, on to you. What would you like to talk about? You puts a smile on your face. What kind of cool 3D item?
All right, so I think the thing that's most exciting that's new recently is this new Intel sensor, and I guess that's for me because I'm sort of like a 3D scanning and computer vision nerd. But the thing that's most exciting about this, and this is actually sort of a tip and a trick, is that there's actually 3 cameras in it. There's the RGB camera, and there's a left IR camera, and there's a right IR camera in addition to a structured light projector. And what that means is that you can do stereo outside, or you can do stereo for longer range inside. And the nice thing is you're not just limited to what Intel's SDK gives you as basically what Intel's SDK gives you as an end result for what the depth is or what the 3D picture is. Picture is like you can actually go and implement state-of-the-art stereo matching like tools or algorithms on that and like basically experiment with it and see how it works. And so basically if you're into that sort of stuff, this device is a lot of fun.
And from what I've seen with it, there are raw streams, which is one of the reasons I use USB 3.
Yep.
So you do have access to all the things like Aaron mentioned. So yes, if you're a geek in that area, as it appears Aaron and I are, we're pretty excited about that. So Drew, on to you.
You know, I feel kind of bad because I've had my head down for so long working on my own stuff. But I was lucky enough to attend the 3D print show at in Pasadena, and that was actually just over a month ago. But there was, I wish I could remember these guys. I can't seem to find their card, but they had a really cool technique for 3D printing. It wasn't filament or SLA or SLS. It was by using beads, like really small beads that feed through a nozzle, similar to FDM, but they control the way the beads go into the nozzle, and that allows you to print in color, but still print in plastic or different types of material. So you can mix incredibly fine resolution, color and materials, including metal within the print, to be able to create whatever you want. And I mean, they didn't have the printer, but I thought their papers and the concept, they had a working videos and prototypes, but it looked really cool, and I'm happy to share the link, but it'll have to be after the
Yeah,
show.
go ahead, please. I may want to try and get them on. We've covered a couple of people using interesting techniques like that, and I don't remember the names either right now. So how about a tip or trick?
Oh man, tip or trick. Well, I mean, I've been working a lot with the Form 1, just because we got it in, and we've been doing our bevel prototypes. And that's been a completely new experience for me. I guess the tip that I've been learning is more about. I mean, I guess it goes back to Jon, because we try to maintain this in the shop when we're doing prototypes is fast iteration. Like, how fast can we just get something working? And with the Form 1, it's been like, okay, we're doing like prototypes for printing and then manufacturing, and it feels so dry. So we've gone back to doing things as quickly as possible, and I've got like gaffer tape, and I can't reach them right now, but I've got gaffer tape and duct tape prototypes of the bevel, and I think the tip is very similar to Jon. I think find ways to solve your problem quickly, just to see if it works, and then you can continue from there. But put down the mouse, put down the computer.
I don't know about that. Okay, no kidding. Aaron, I didn't get your tip and trick, and I passed you over. So you had a little more time to think about it. Tip or trick? Aaron?
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, my tip or trick was that. Okay, yes, was basically that you can get the raw streams from this device, and you can run it through whatever algorithm you want.
Okay.
That's a trick. It's a trick, Mike. He said it already.
Okay. I'm
sorry,
slow.
I like it.
Yeah.
I think it's a great trick, and I actually kind of want one of those things. I don't know what I'd do with it, because I don't think I'm quite to the level that you are, but it's pretty cool.
I guess the add-on to that tip or trick is that if there is like a certain type of scene that you want to capture, and I won't say exactly what we're doing with it, but if you have a very specific use case, you can actually structure what you do with those left and right IR frames to be best for that particular task, as opposed to just generally trying to get the depth out. And so if you're trying to recover some scene element,
I think you're beating around the bush here and giving a kind of little tech. This is for all the techs, all the little actual programmers that listen to the show.
Okay, that's probably
this is the secret that they'll be looking for.
It's probably a bit too nerdy for.
No, it's very technical. I like it. It's a good trick. I like it.
Now, and actually, I've been thinking about how that parallax can be put to use too. So cool, Aaron. We'll have to talk more. All right, Chris, it's your turn.
Okay.
We'll put a smile on your face. Well, you got a smile on your face, so just move on to tip or trick.
Today
okay, we're done.
To the do-it-yourself headphone kits got funded today.
Yay!
Yeah, so these are 3D printable headphone kits. Pretty fun, and I'm smiling about that, because I'll hopefully see these files. They were 17 euros. They send you the guts. Obviously the little cushion and the wiring and the speakers and all the stuff that you need for a headphone, because you can't 3D print that. Well, maybe you can, but I can't. So, but the plastic part is all ready to be 3D printed. So that's my smile. And my trick kind of goes along with what you guys were saying, which I like what you're saying, where you're working on something and you got to use your Sugru or your duct tape, but mine is take a break every once in a while and print something fun that doesn't have anything to do with your project, just to keep the print moving, to keep yourself brushed up on what you're doing, and just it's Halloween. Print a pumpkin. Go to Thingiverse and grab some Halloween-related thing, knick-knack, and bring it home to your girlfriend. Because my girlfriend, she eats it up. She loves it. I brought her one of these like ghoul things the other day. She loves Halloween, and so she was really happy. So my tip is to take a break and print something fun. Do something fun.
Sounds good. That's good advice. All right, on to me. I'll make it very quick. One, what puts a big smile on my face is knowing that some of these kids are smiling or having a little less pain. That puts a huge smile on my face. The other thing is having you guys on. It's been an interesting 2 years, ups and downs, and I have learned so much from all of you. Being part of this and letting me be part of your lives and talk to you and have to put up with me. I know that's probably hard. But no, it's been really great and be able to go out and talk about this and actually meet some of you, like Jon in person. It was like, wow, Jon's here. When I was part of a panel moderation at South by Southwest. So it's pretty cool to bump into people. I seem to be getting around more and more. I think this year I went to like 6 or 7 different places with my interesting little monopole with like 6 different sensors on it. I think people know me by now, and doing all my own interviews by myself because Chris keeps bailing out on me. Kidding.
Oh, no.
But I'm not really going to give a tip. You all gave it, but I do want to give a plug for myself. One, if you're into this kind of VR stuff, I'm going to have a real cool little thing coming out in a week or 2 for Halloween. I won't tell you any more than that, but I think you'll find it very fun. If you've been following the show, I've actually been working with a 3D artist, Ruslan, from Israel, and so we're collaborating on something really cool. So hopefully that will be out. And then finally, I'm still going to be doing the show Friday, and if you want to know more about why I feel, or my question is, who is the new viewfinder for? And if you don't know if you've been seeing it in the new, Mattel came out with their viewfinder, which is a VR set. But I have some interesting thoughts on that, and my question really is, who is it for? Because, as I'll say on Friday, I'm wondering if it was for the kids or maybe for the big kids. I don't know. We'll find out. So on the note, thank you very much for all of you showing up. Thank you, Chris, for supporting me in these last 2 years. If it wasn't for your great smile and good take on life over these past 2 years, I probably still wouldn't be here now talking about it. But so again, thank you. Thank you. Thanks, for Mike. Those of you, our big 4 viewers. Hey, hi out there.
Yep, thank you.
Mom. I'm glad that you. No, kidding. She wouldn't. They're up in Angel Fire, and they don't really have good internet, so that's not a possibility. Angel Fire, New Mexico, for those of you wondering. But yes, thank you to the audience. It has been growing steadily. We have, I think, over 10,000 views of all of ours. Some of them have approached like 5,000 views. Actually, I have one, which I wanted to tell Phil. When I did the first thing of this Neoti VR, we're almost up to 30,000 views on it. So we're growing, and I really appreciate you for out there taking some time to be part of this. And I'm glad a lot of you have come back and wanted to contribute to it. And I'm just going to keep plugging away. We're trying to shorten our Friday shows to like 30 minutes. And so that we can keep it within something that I can do and not feel like I'm putting all my time into this and making very little out of it. So it's been a labor of love. And so again, thank you all. And again, Jon, Aaron, Drew, and of course you, Mr. Chris Kopak. He's also known around here as the Print Whisperer. So come back on Friday and hear some more from him. So
all right.
On that, Chris, sign us off.
Again, thanks for the last 2 years, everybody. It's been a wild ride, and we will see you Friday on another episode of All Things 3D.
Bye.